The war of words between the Trump administration and North Korea escalated this week. President Trump referred to Kim Jong Un as Rocket Man at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday and threatened to totally destroy North Korea if its pursuit of nuclear weapons forces the U.S. to defend itself or its allies. Then on Thursday, President Trump announced new sanctions against Pyongyang and countries that do business with them. And in a rare statement given directly by the North Korean dictator, Kim called Mr. Trump mentally deranged. North Korea's foreign minister then went on to say the country may consider testing a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific Ocean. Then on Friday, President Trump tweeted this: Kim Jong Un of North Korea, who is obviously a madman who doesn't mind starving or killing his people, will be tested like never before. Okay, Executive Director at the Arms Control Association, Daryl Kimball, is in Washington to discuss all this. First of all, this threat of a hydrogen bomb in or over the Pacific Ocean, is that something we think the North is capable of? What would that look like? What would that mean for the standoff?
Well, this is just the latest possibility in this escalating crisis. Yes, I think North Korea is capable of detonating a nuclear weapon over some part of the Pacific Ocean. They have a missile that is capable of reaching that point. They probably have a warhead that is small enough to go on that missile. So we have seen North Korea make threats and boast about what it's doing. It has followed through on most of those threats and most of those boasts. So I think we have to take this seriously. This is not the only action they may take in response to what Kim Jong Un sees as an insult from President Trump at the United Nations.
You have been very critical of the president. You wrote today he's not competent to manage the North Korean crisis. What's your complaint with what he's been doing?
Well, in a situation like this, which is now very much like the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 that almost brought the U.S. and the Soviet Union to the brink of nuclear war, each side needs to be very careful with their words. They need to be very deliberate and measured. What seems to be happening with the Trump administration is a lack of coordination, different messages coming from senior officials like Rex Tillerson and the president. This is confusing. It creates a sense of miscalculation. And I think Kim is responding to this, Kim Jong Un, by taking the insults from President Trump personally. And he is just as determined as President Trump not to back down. So this is not the way to manage a escalating crisis with a nuclear-armed country in Asia. There are potentially millions of lives at stake here. A war in the Korean Peninsula, if it begins, could very quickly escalate and go nuclear. So this is a very serious situation that requires much more measured language, much more coordinated messages, and an attempt to engage in direct dialogue with North Korea to make sure there's no miscalculation that leads to war.
Beyond that coordination, how do you de-escalate?
Well, we're now in a difficult situation, and I think the first step is to build upon some of the very tenuous, behind-the-scenes contacts that are taking place between some State Department officials, some North Korean officials in New York through what's called the New York Channel. We need to build on that. It's possible, if there is a will to do this, for two senior officials like Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, North Korean Foreign Minister Ri, to meet in a closed-door meeting on the margins of some other conference at the UN. Both men are walking the hallways in New York. Another possibility would be for a third party, perhaps the UN Secretary General, to bring together high-level leaders behind closed doors of the United States, China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, Russia, to explore how to de-escalate tensions.
And what about people who say we've basically been trying this for a generation, it doesn't work, they aren't honest brokers, give me a break with the talking?
Well, you know, there's a myth that diplomacy has never worked with North Korea. The reality, if you look at the history, is that when we've had the right mixture of pressure, of sanctions, of the threat of punishment, and a serious high-level dialogue, we have had some success. For 8 years, During the Clinton years, the North Koreans agreed to stop producing plutonium, the main ingredient for nuclear weapons. They also stopped ballistic missile testing for a long period due to talks. That did fall apart. There were other attempts with the George W. Bush administration that were successful for a while. Just because there have been breakdowns of these agreements in the past doesn't mean we cannot and should not be trying once again. There has to be a diplomatic off-ramp. Otherwise, right now, both sides are moving very quickly in one direction, and that direction takes us towards escalation and potential conflict.
Okay, Daryl Kimball in Washington, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.